Public Housing Authority will stand in session. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Santa Cruz? Here. Commissioner Cunningham?
Here.
Commissioner Dahl?
Here.
Commissioner Lee?
Here.
Commissioner Fimbres? Absent excused.
Excused.
Commissioner Hill?
Here.
Chair Romero?
Absent excused.
Mr. Kosacic?
Here. The City Manager's Public Housing Authority Communication Number 8, dated February 22nd, is received into and made a part of the record. Is there a motion to approve the monthly board report? That one was mine. I can't make motions tonight.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Okay, voice vote. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item number 3, City Clerk. Let's read the item.
Public Housing Authority Intergovernmental Agreement, City of South Tucson Housing Authority.
City Manager's Public Housing Authority Communication Number 9, dated February 22nd, is received into and made a part of the record. Ms. Clerk, would you read the resolution PHA 2023-15 by number and title only, please?
Resolution number PHA 2023-15 relating to intergovernmental agreement approving an IGA between the City of South Tucson Housing Authority and the City of Tucson Housing Authority relating to administration of the Housing Choice Voucher Programs and declaring an emergency.
What's the board's pleasure?
Chair, I'd like to move the item. Second.
Okay, discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Commissioner Santa Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Aye.
Commissioner Dahl?
Aye.
Commissioner Lee?
Aye.
Commissioner Hill?
Aye.
Mr. Kosacic?
Aye. Resolution PHA 2023-015 passes unanimously. Item number 4, City Clerk.
Public Housing Authority write-off uncollectible tenant accounts receivable approval.
City Manager's PHA Communication dated number 10, dated February 22nd, is received into and made a part of the record. Ms. Clerk, you're requested to read Resolution PHA 2023-16 by number and title only, please.
Resolution number PHA 2023-16 relating to public housing, authorizing the approval of the write-off of $40,942 with 40 cents in public housing tenant accounts receivable as uncollectible and declaring an emergency.
And what's the board's pleasure?
Your Honor, I'd like to move the item. Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Commissioner Santa Cruz?
Aye.
Commissioner Cunningham?
Aye.
Commissioner Dahl?
Aye.
Commissioner Lee?
Aye.
Commissioner Hill?
Aye.
Mr. Kosacic?
Aye. PHA 2023-016 passes unanimously. Item number 5, the City Manager's Public Housing Authority Communication Number 7, dated February 22nd, is received into and made a part of the record. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from January 24th, 2023?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from that meeting. Second.
Okay, discussion? Voice vote on this one. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion opposed? Nobody's opposed. The motion to approve the minutes from January 24th, 2023 passes unanimously. Item number 6, Ms. Clerk.
Adjournment?
The Board of Commissioners is adjourned. The Mayor and Council will now convene our regular meeting. Thank you. The council will now stand in session. We have a roll call, please.
Mick Santa Cruz.
Here.
Mr. Cunningham.
Here.
Mr. Dahl.
Here.
Mrs. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Fimbres.
Absent excused.
Mr. Kozaczek.
Here. And for the record, Councilmember Lee is participating virtually. The invocation and pledge of allegiance. The invocation will be given by Pastor Larry Uguia. Do I see you, Larry? There you are, right there.
Here I am.
With the Silver Project, and after the invocation, please remain standing for the pledge of allegiance.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, City Council, thank you. Again, I'm always honored to come and pray for you guys. You are our leaders. So if you all bow your heads, if you're so inclined, we'll go to work. Lord, thank you for this day. We ask you to just keep us warm and keep us close to you. Lord, I ask you that you draw these men and these women to you. Draw them close to you, that they would counsel with you. All the choices and the dealings that go on, we have really no idea. So we ask, Lord, that you would give them wise counsel, that they would take that wise counsel. They would take Tucson, Arizona, and use it as a gem, as a city that would that other cities would inspire to be like, a godly city. So, Lord, I ask you, our mayor, our city councilman, a little special for Mr. Feen, but as he's not doing well, so Lord, throw some special grace. But most of all, Lord, Tucson, Arizona, this is where it is. Take good care of us. In your name we pray, amen. To the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have two proclamations to read into the record tonight, and the entire council is going to join down at the podium. The first proclamation will be for Black History Month, and will those here who are here to accept the proclamation please come forward. The second one will be for United States Navy Week, and after we finish with the first proclamation, then I'll invite the naval folks up. So come in.
Buenas tardes, good evening. I have the honor to get to read the proclamation since Mayor Romero's not here today. So, where Area's Black History Month is an opportunity to spotlight Black history, which is American history, and reaffirm our commitment to Black joy, Black futures, and ensure a thriving Black community here in Tucson now and for generations to come. And where Area's Black history is found in Tucson's neighborhoods, public spaces, institutions, and businesses. And where Area's the Dunbar Pavilion and the new African American Museum of Southern Arizona provide resources to connect us with Tucson's Black history, as well as community centers for Black life and culture. Where Area's every day is a good day to study history and to work to improve the lives of our Black neighbors and invest in programs and services that uplift our community, and where Area's our city is committed to equity and seeks to invest in Black futures by creating workforce development opportunities, support for entrepreneurs and startups, and partnerships with our educational institutions and private sector. And where Area's we honor and continue the work of Black Americans like Dr. King and many others, I'm gonna throw that in there, who have created a more fair and inclusive democracy, helping our nation move closer to the realization of its full promise for everyone. Now, therefore, I, as a surrogate to Mayor Romero of the city of Tucson, Arizona, do hereby proclaim February 2023 to be Black History Month in this community and encourage all of our residents, public officials, and educators to observe this month with relevant programs, ceremonies, and activities. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the city of Tucson, Arizona be affixed this 22nd day of February, 2023. Thank you.
Would somebody like to make some comments?
On behalf of Bob and Beverly Elliott, who established the African American Museum of Southern Arizona, we are pleased to accept this proclamation and to encourage all of you to visit the museum because Black history in Arizona is America's history. And so we are proud to be here tonight.
Let's do a picture.
This man running every morning. All right. Well done. Thank you all.
Okay, Rear Admiral Brad Rosen, Commander of the Navy Region Southwest. If y'all would, here they come. Navy Lieutenant Susie Bigley, an aide to the Admiral. Navy Lieutenant Michael White, Public Affairs Officer. And Mr. Rick Spearman, Navy Office of Community Outreach. Councilmember Cunningham, our resident veteran, is going to read this proclamation.
All right, I'm not the only veteran. We've got 3 veterans on this council, so I just happen to be here tonight. Also, following up to that last one, we got a lot of East Siders here tonight. Go check out the museum. Go check out the Dunbar Center. It's a pretty cool piece of Tucson that, you know, when you live out there, sometimes you don't get a chance to explore. This is a proclamation for the United States Navy from the City of Tucson, Office of the Mayor. Whereas the City of Tucson is honored to have the presence of the United States Navy in our community, and whereas the state of Arizona is home to more than 8,304 active duty sailors and naval officers, 1,077 Navy reservists, and more than 1,130, and more than 10,000 active duty and reserve retirees. And whereas the United States Navy is instrumental in ensuring the safety and the security of $22.5 billion in annual exports from the state of Arizona. And whereas the citizens of Tucson take great pride in supporting our namesake vessels, the USS Tucson, the USS John McCain, and the USS Gabriel Giffords. And whereas Tucson Navy Week hosts special events and programs for the city to increase the community's knowledge and understanding of their Navy and its global mission. And whereas Tucson Navy Week includes several public events, including concerts by the Navy Band Southwest and performances by supporting assets. And now, therefore, Regina Romero, Mayor, City of Tucson, does hereby proclaim the week of February 2026 to be United States Navy Week. Thank you so much.
Well done. Given Richard's coins there.
Oh, and Richard has, Councilmember Fimbres, there's a military tradition when there's no time to do paperwork for a ribbon, but you're doing something that's better than just your job, you get a coin. And even when I was in the Army, I got a few coins over the years. And so this is a coin for each member of our delegation from the United States Navy. Oh, I'm sorry. And the tradition, if I remember it correctly, is if Mr. Fimbres runs into you in the next 5 to 10 years and you don't have your coin on you, you owe him a beer. That's correct.
Right back at you. That's add to your collection. Thank you very much. Oh, there's one coin there for you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you all, appreciate you. Okay, item 2D, City Clerk.
Appointments to boards, committees, and commissions.
City Manager's communication dated number 56, dated February 22nd, is received into and made a part of the record. Is there a motion to approve the appointments to the commissions?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. And voice vote? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I would like to thank Mr. David Pietz for being a member of the Fort Lowell Historic Advisory Board, and Jim Glock, name a blast out of the past, for the West University Historic Advisory Board. Item number 3, City Clerk.
Mayor and council report, summary of current events.
City Manager's communication dated 48. Number 48, dated February 22nd, is received into and made a part of the record. This time has been scheduled to allow members of the mayor and council to report on current events. These are to be current events of activities within the community, not position statements on policy issue. Does any member of the council have a report at this time? And let's start with Councilmember Lee. She's virtual.
Nothing tonight.
Okay. I'll work in reverse order. Councilmember Dell.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to congratulate the leadership of Old Pasqua with passage of the recent legislation that added Old Pasqua and area near it to the tribe's federal trust lands, which has led to an incredible event on Monday. The mayor was there to celebrate the demolition of the old Century Park Theater near the Interstate 10 and just south of Grant. It will be making way for a new casino and hotel and added development in that area, benefit to our community. That's it. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Cunningham.
First thing I want to do is congratulate the winners of the Ross Scrooge Classic and Coach Dale Lopez on the 40th Ross Scrooge Classic. It is a tournament that's held every year for all of our all Tucson area middle schools and elementary schools. They have a basketball tournament. They hold it every year. This year's champion, 5th grade and under co-ed, is Peter Howell. 5th grade and under girls champion is Peter Howell. 6th grade and under co-ed is Summit View. 7th grade and under co-ed is Gridley Middle School in Ward 2. And 7th grade and under girls is Ross Scrooge Middle School. Again, it was the 40th anniversary and the 40th year they've done the Ross Scrooge Classic. It's free. It's free for the kids to play. It's free for the parents to attend. And it's probably the last program like that in youth sports we have in Tucson. So congratulations to those. In about 12 hours, well, maybe 13 and a half, I'll be out over on Irvington getting ready for the Fiesta de los Vaqueros parade. And it's the 98th anniversary of the parade. I think it's the 96th version. A lot of people don't know this, but it is the longest non-mechanical parade in the country and the second longest in the world, though I beg to differ. I think ours is still longer if you use our original route, all right? But come check out the parade. But this rodeo weekend that we've had, that Thursday after President's Day every year has become our weekend. We have MLS soccer here. We have the gem show here. A lot of times we have some type of baseball classic here, and of course we have the rodeo. So, and we have a golf tournament, I think, every year here. So this is one of our busiest weekends. Enjoy it and enjoy Tucson despite the inclement weather. Last thing about the rodeo, this year's marshal is Jessica Cox. For those who aren't familiar with Miss Jessica, she is, I think, a black belt in Taekwondo, and she's like a world champion, and she is a pilot, and she did all that despite being born with no arms. And it's a pretty exciting person to have, especially with all the advocacy we've been doing for people with disabilities out of my office. So that's enough. I don't want to forget about Jessica. I've got 2 other real quick announcements, but those were so exciting I almost forgot. I'd like to congratulate Kat Stratford. She's now joined my team. She's the first ward advocate just for the unsheltered. So we have a member of my staff that responds directly to unsheltered issues through the ward office. And She is also working with our homeless protocol team. She's been talking to neighborhood leaders, visiting camps to offer services and collecting supplies for them as well. She's only been on the staff for a month, but I'm already inspired by her optimism. I also want to congratulate Fort Lowell the Old Fort Lowell Neighborhood Association, who had the reunion of the fort on February 11th. And this is kind of leading up to the 150th anniversary of the Old Fort Lowell Neighborhood celebration on March 18th. And this event is a chance to celebrate all the families that settled in that area after Fort Lowell was commissioned in 1891. Many families came to visit their homes and celebrate Mass at the San Pedro Chapel, which was built in 1915. It has a special place in my heart because I got married there. So anyway, March 18th, the 150th anniversary of the Old Fort Lowell Neighborhood Association. And those concludes my announcements.
Okay, Councilmember Santa Cruz.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. This Saturday, February 25th, is the Harambe Festival at the Dunbar Pavilion. Events will be happening all day, but they kick off at 11 a.m. with an African-American read, and they conclude with the Motown concert starting at 7 p.m. This Thursday and Saturday, we're also having our Ward 1 Vecinos open houses. This Thursday, if weather permits, we will be meeting at the Sosa Carrillo House at 151 South Granada Avenue from 6 to 8 p.m. And on Saturday, February 25th, at the Fred Archer Center from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. These are great opportunities to connect with city departments about the different programs and services and infrastructure projects happening in Ward 1, as well as learning about the Ward 1's participatory budgeting process. We are also having ongoing buffalo grass pools on the west side through February and into March. And for more information with the full schedule, please visit TucsonCleanandBeautiful.org. And finally, this Saturday, February 25th, we're also having a river cleanup with the Sonoran Institute. We will be meeting at 10 a.m. at 2301 Forbes Boulevard, and we're trying to clean up 2,000 pounds of trash in 2 hours. And for folks who volunteer, the Sonoran Institute is having a volunteer celebration at Dragoon Brewing after the cleanup. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 4, Ms. Clerk.
City Manager's Report, Summary of Current Events.
City Manager's Communication Number 49, dated February 22nd, is received into and made a part of the record. The time has been scheduled to allow the City Manager to report on current events. Mr. Manager.
No report today. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Okay. Item 5, Ms. Clerk.
Liquor license applications.
City Manager's Communication Number 43, dated February 22nd, is received into and made a part of the record. Ms. Clerk, please read the liquor licenses agenda.
On this evening's liquor license agenda, we have 3 requests for new licenses, 3 requests for special events, and 4 requests for agent change acquisition of control applications. An appropriate motion would be to forward items 5B 1 through 3, 5C 1 through 3, and 5D 1 through 4 to the State Liquor Board with a recommendation of approval.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make that motion.
Second.
Second?
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item number 6, Ms. Clerk.
Call to the audience.
At this time, the public is allowed to address the mayor and council on any issue except for items scheduled for a public hearing at this meeting. Please make sure you've read the information on the back of the speaker card before making your presentation. Speakers are limited to 3-minute presentations, and call to the audience is scheduled to last no more than 30 minutes. Pursuant to Arizona open meeting law, individual council members may ask the city manager to review the matter, ask that the matter be placed on a future agenda, or respond to criticism made by speakers. However, the mayor and council may not discuss or take legal action on matters raised during call to the audience. So we have a few speakers. Should have enough time for all of them. First speaker will be Jesse Lugo, and up after Jesse will be Abriza Ziguir.
Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council, city staff members, my name is Jesse Lugo. a native Tucsonan and Ward 5 homeowners since 1974. The statement that I'm going to read to you is in reference with electric vehicles and highway user funds, known as HERF funds. Switching to electric vehicles, EV, will continue to ruin our roads without a fuel tax replacement and state and federal depleting funds. So the question is, who will pay for our future roads as EV defund the fuel tax? In Arizona, consumers pay at the pump in total taxes for federal and state of 37.4 for gasoline and 51.4 for diesel as the road tax per gallon that is built into the price of fuel. The money collected goes to fund the Highway User Revenue Fund, again known as HERF, that supports road infrastructure that includes our neighborhood streets. EVs don't fuel up, so EV drivers don't contribute in that way. There is a solution for our state Arizona legislators, as a new state law needs to be approved without political party dissension because it is the right thing to do. A new Arizona law will require that home, commercial, city, county, and state charging stations install electric meters for kilowatts used by Arizona power companies to collect the fees rate while hooking up to the charging stations, or adding a tax at EV charging stations. Then send the collective funds to the state and federal HERF authorities. Petroleum fuel suppliers that collect current fuel taxes and then submit to HERF federal and state coffers can assist with the process of the collection structure. People that cannot afford a EV should not subsidize EV vehicle owners that use roads. This is important because as HERF revenues continue to decline because of better vehicle fuel economy and higher fuel costs, you will hear about increasing the Arizona fuel tax to be increased and be indexed to inflation, as this harms the deprived workers. The price to purchase an EV vehicle exceeds many household incomes, that the price people out of the benefits for owning selective fuel. We need your help, Mayor and council members, as I ask that you also direct your City of Tucson lobbyists to contact the governor, state legislature to draft legislation or support a bill this year so future of the City of Tucson HERF revenue funds received do not decline. And the issue for that, as the voters passed Proposition 411, as I understand it, by 2024, there's a commitment to do street maintenance on neighborhood streets within 2 years. So again, we're addressing the issue before any future funds are depleted. Mr. Vice Mayor, I have copies for the mayor and every council member and city manager, Mr. Ortega. There are 3 other supporting documents. You want to, at your leisure, take a look at them.
Thank you, Jesse. Abriza Ziguir, and next speaker after Abriza will be Colette Altaffer.
Mayor and Council, thank you for your attention today. My name is Abriza Ziguir. I reside in Ward 1, and I am not a paid speaker. TEP's franchise agreement expires in 2026, and the earliest it can be renewed is 3 years prior to the expiration, which is now. It seems that the city is pushing the franchise agreement through too quickly. It leaves little time for citizens to study and review what is being proposed, and even less time for the city to review citizens' comments and concerns. A non-biased city open house rather than a TEP-sponsored open house would be preferable. What is the cost of a special election in May? I would think it would be fair to voters to have it during the city's election and less expensive for the city. And what's the rush? I just recently received the current franchise agreement that TEP is working under and have not had time to compare it to the proposed one. Thank you, Mr. Ortega, for sending. TEP's 2022 annual report to the Arizona Corporation Commission comes out April 1st. I looked at 2021's annual report. The cost of going to renewable electric generation is not apparent or classified separately under miscellaneous. Revenues from renewables energy surcharge, which is on page 15 of this report, is just under 58 million. I'm not an accountant, and I could be reading this wrong, but if they have that much in surcharge and are not using it for current renewable energy projects, what makes you think that they're going to do it anytime in the future? Please reconsider and do not bring the TEP franchise agreement up to a vote by the citizens of Tucson this year. Well, after all, what's the rush? The docket number of the 2021 ACC Commission is E-D1933A. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Colette Altaffer, and after Colette will be J.T. Salvatierra.
Good evening, I'm Colette Altaffer. I'm a native Tucsonan and I am not a paid speaker. I slogged my way through all 300 pages of the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, Tucson's version of a resiliency document, and I came away feeling that something was off. There are numerous instances where a disconnect exists between the document and what actually happens here in Tucson. Smart growth is repeatedly cited as the model this document follows, so I did a little research on it. I came across an article about the myth of smart growth, in which the author states that smart growth means endless growth. It fails to recognize that even the smartest growth places a heavy burden on our environment, creating significant impacts, most of which cannot be fully mitigated. Suddenly, the disconnects in this so-called resiliency document started to make sense. The climate plan advocates for density, but also for planting 1 million trees. Tucson uses overlay zones like the IID, the Main Gate Overlay, and the Sunshine Mile to achieve that density, but these overlay zones all have minimal open space requirements. They allow rooftop terraces to count as open space, and they contain liberal opportunities for waivers from the landscaping requirements. What we end up with is acres of concrete and steel and almost no trees. No wonder that heat island effect is not discussed in the same sentence as density. No wonder that there is no mention of our native plant protection ordinance or how development services has ignored those requirements for years. No wonder that water, which underpins everything, is relegated to a separate document under the guise of avoiding redundancy. Heaven forbid that we should have an honest discussion about growth and density and the impact it has on our diminishing water resources. As this author stated, the myth of smart growth is that it supposedly represents the ultimate solution to our growth-related problems. At its best, it is a partial solution that has the potential to mitigate some of the impacts of continued growth. The moral dilemma with smart growth is that it provides a rationale for allowing us to make the problem bigger. If resiliency is what you're really after, you will not get there until our zoning codes reflect as much concern for the environment as they currently reflect for developers' profits. Until then, the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan will not get you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Colette. J.P. Salvatierra, and following J.P. will be Bonnie Paulus.
Thank you, Councilman Kozaczek and council persons. I've been a member of the Citizen Advisory Board for the Park Euclid Hazmat Superfund site, which recently had its record of decision, but the task is incomplete as far as the groundwater, the perched aquifer, and the regional aquifer under that area by Park and Broadway is still incredibly dirty, and it's inconceivable to just ignore it as an option for us to clean up. And this was in the last ADEQ meeting that we had. Our group, our panel requested an electronic form, complete record of the Union Pacific Railroad and their cleanup project that they had. They had five diesel extraction points along their right-of-way that ran over 10 years. And everything just seemed to go quick and fast and simple, but it discusses nothing about the diesel and the ethylene glycol that's in the perch and regional aquifer in that area. And it has to be identified, it has to be resolved. This is something we just can't turn away from. It's fine to have programs that, say, oh, we have a new Water One thing going on and, we're doing this and that. But what about remediation, true remediation? We waited 30 years in our neighborhood just to get some of that done. And now it's not complete. And we can't overlook that. And Union Pacific needs to be accountable for the things that they did that resolved in this kind of a condition that we face right now. And that's why we requested, because Mission Linen had no idea of knowing how much of the content under their property was factored in from Union Pacific environmental damage. And this was like a foot to 18 inches of diesel sitting over the aquifer. I mean, it's huge, okay? I don't know how much of that is still of that point in fact, but that's the crisis. The next talking point I wanted to make real quickly is that TEP's new contract, what's the rush? TP has always been kind of unfriendly to Tucson consumers for solar options. For roughly an annual franchise fee of $300,000, why are we compelled to allow a 13% profit for all their operating costs and, as a basis? I mean, no one gets that in this day and age. And we need more energy options. I'm sure, Mr. Ortega would like to see more plans that allow better benefit to the consumer in this regard. And I don't think they're on the table. And we're just being forced to rush because, we want to create this wonderful little...
JP, your time's up. You need to wrap up.
Okay. Anyway, I don't agree with continuing talks with TEP. I think they need to be postponed. The next annual renewal is 2 to 3 years from now. So why are we doing this? We're in a totally new direction. We have a new Democratic Attorney General, Governor.
Got it.
And we're in a strong point to have really good, wonderful things for Tucson.
Bonnie Paulus, and the final speaker after Bonnie will be Beryl Baker.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Bonnie Polis. I reside at 1208 East Smoot Drive, and I am here representing myself and my neighborhood tonight. I'd like you to imagine what it would be like if every weekend in the spring and fall you were subjected to amplified noise from a festival event located a quarter of a mile from your house. Continue to imagine what it would be like to hear this noise even from inside your home and for hours on end every weekend in the nice time of year. This is what residents in my neighborhood who live along the Rito River have to endure from events that are held at Rito Park. We've been complaining to both the city and the county for over a decade. Our complaints from the noise from events using amplified sound have been largely ignored. In fact, today, residents do not even have a phone number where we can call to register a complaint, nor will the sheriff or the police respond to complaints when they are occurring. We recently went to a Board of Supervisors call to the public to ask that they can discontinue any and all events at the park that use amplified sound for entertainment. We're waiting to hear how they respond. But tonight, I'm asking you as our elected officials to require that the county and the Rito Park Foundation abide by Tucson's noise ordinance. That would include shutting down events at Rito Park that disturb the peace. We're really tired of asking for this. Rito Park is not an appropriate venue for festival-type entertainment, primarily because it is open air and they orient the sound toward the south where the Rito River funnels that sound throughout the neighborhood. The soccer games that are held there, the farmers market that uses the site on weekends, and even the horse racing that takes place are not the problem. The problem exists when amplified entertainment is allowed to blast noise that can be heard a quarter of a mile away and more. There are events that I can hear from the inside of my house, and I live a mile away from the park. Please examine the aerial photographs that I have here and notice that Rito Park is in a densely populated area of the city. The park was never designed for events that use amplified sound for entertainment. We're asking that you provide a phone number to call where there's a complaint about the noise at Rito Park and to have that information recorded for future discussion. Please do not allow the audible assault to continue to torment the residents who live in proximity to Rito Park. We even invite you to join us for one of those events so that you can experience what the people in my neighborhood experience on a regular basis.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Mr. Rankin, could you send us a note just to indicate our jurisdictional authority over what Ms. Paulus is referencing? Beryl Baker?
Hi, I'm Beryl Baker. I live on Mission in the city. And congratulations, Paul, for being part of the rodeo parade. I drove it for 20 years. I might have even driven you. Since before the 70s, the Tucson City Council people got recalled for raising the water rates due to concerns about overdrafting water in the valley. People have been warning that Tucson would run out of water. The Arizona water management areas were put in place as a Band-Aid to try to deal with groundwater overpumping. What a joke. The developers just relied on the city to guarantee the 100-year water supply. The city's councils bought the joke and continued to approve sprawl. After all, it was not in their lifetime. The city started importing water from the Colorado River, somehow believing that water was an infinite supply to cover their poor decisions. Even when the drought started and predictions were made about water supply, city council, board of supervisors, developers acted as though water would be here forever. No one seemed to learn from history when people who had settled in these areas in the past, built cities with large populations, had to leave due to mega droughts and lack of water. They had to learn to live with the land, not exploit it. People try to solve the problem of water shortage by encouraging water harvesting, even sometimes creating projects that hold back water. But that is more in the name of flood control, not containing water for future use. Then they create tree planting projects to cool the city, while not having water harvesting components as part of that, so the trees can survive on their own. Meanwhile, allowing the killing of long-established trees watered by rain runoff. That 100-year mark is not that far off. What then? Make another benchmark? The city-county needs to stop growing. Find ways to try to be sustainable with the huge water-guzzling population it has now. Stop depending on growth for its revenue. Be leaders for the future, not leaders of the past. water, or lack thereof, will define whether this city lives or dies. As elected officials, it is your responsibility to make the hard choices that guide now and the future. Thank you.
That was our last speaker card for a call to the audience. We'll move on to item number 7. Ms. Clerk,
Consent items A through F.
reports from the city manager on the consent agenda are received into and made a part of the record. Ms. Clerk, you are requested to read the consent agenda.
A is approval of minutes. B is the Tucson Code amending section 1-20 to reflect the projection of ward boundary lines. C is city vehicles exemption of certain city vehicles from bearing identifying markings. D is housing and community development pre-exclusive negotiating agreement, ENA with FSL to begin pre-development on Ward 1 housing properties. E is housing and community development, City of Tucson People, Communities, and Homes Investment Plan, funding recommendations, affordable rental housing, American Rescue Plan, state and local fiscal recovery funds. F is Industrial Development Authority, authorization of amendments to the bylaws.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. No discussion. Roll call.
Mix Santa Cruz.
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham.
Aye.
Mr. Dahl.
Aye.
Mrs. Lee.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Kozachik.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, item number 8. Ms. Clerk, please read the heading.
Public hearing, substantial amendment to City of Tucson HUD annual action plans for HUD program years 2019, 2021, and 2022.
City Manager's Communication number 45, dated February 22nd, is received into and made a part of the record. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the time and place legally advertised for a public hearing on the proposed substantial amendments to the city's annual action plans for HUD program years 2019, 21, and 22. We don't have any speaker cards turned in. Is anybody here who would like to speak at this public hearing? Seeing none.
Mr. Chair, I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Fine. Public hearing was never open, but we'll consider it closed. May I have a motion on the item?
Mr. Vice Mayor, I move to pass and adopt Resolution 23573.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Okay, Ms. Clerk, please read the motion.
So resolution number 23573 is relating to affordable housing, approving amendments to the 2019, 2021, and 2022 annual action plans, authorizing submission of the substantial amendments to the Unified States Department of Housing and Urban Development, and declaring an emergency.
Okay, thank you. So I jumped the gun. So now what's the council's pleasure?
I move to pass and adopt Resolution 23573.
Any discussion?
Second.
Roll call.
Mix Santa Cruz.
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham. Mr. Dahl.
Aye.
Mrs. Lee.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Kozachik.
Aye. Resolution 23573 passes unanimously. Item number 9 is another public hearing, but Councilmember Santa Cruz, you have item 11 later in the agenda that looks to be fairly quick item. Would you object if we moved that up in front of this one?
No, we can do that.
Okay, thank you. So item 11, Ms. Clerk, please read the heading.
Zoning C9-22-04, St. Mary's and Silverbell, R-2 to C-1, ordinance adoption.
City Manager's Communication number 47, dated February 22nd, is received into and made a part of the record. This is a request to rezone an approximately 0.9 acre parcel from R2 to C1 zoning to construct a drive-through coffee shop restaurant with outside seating. A cross-access agreement is proposed between the subject property and the property to the west to facilitate access to the subject property via both Silverbell Road and St. Mary's. The rezoning site is located at the northwest corner of the intersection of North Silverbell Road and West St. Mary's. Is the applicant or representative present?
Good evening, Vice Mayor
Are you agreeable
Kozaczek.
to
Yes.
the proposed requirements?
Yes, we are agreeable to all of the conditions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Clerk, you're requested to read ordinance 11987 by number and title only.
Ordinance number 11987 relating to zoning, amending zoning district boundaries in the area located at the northwest corner of the intersection of North Silverbell Road and St. Mary's Road in case C9-22-04, West St. Mary's and Silverbell R-2 to C-1, and setting an effective date.
What's the council's pleasure?
I move that mayor and council pass and adopt ordinance 11987.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Santa Cruz?
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham?
Aye.
Mr. Dahl?
Aye.
Mrs. Lee?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Kozaczek?
Aye. Ordinance 11987 passes unanimously. So now we'll jump back to item number 9. Ms. Clerk, please read the heading.
Public hearing zoning C9-22-02 Tucson Mountain RV Park Pad Ajo Way R-1 to Pad. City Manager's Report, Ordinance Adoption.
City Manager's communication number 52 dated February 22nd is received into and made a part of the record. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the time and place legally advertised for a public hearing on a request to rezone approximately 0.95 acres from R1 to PAD zoning to establish a Tucson Mountain RV park planned area development. The zoning examiner and staff recommend approval of the PAD zoning and adoption of the ordinance subject to conditions. Councilmember Santa Cruz, would you like to open this before we open the public hearing with comments or thoughts?
So our office and neighbors have been discussing this area, and the only way to have more discussion to make sure that the concerns that neighbors were bringing up was for it to come to a public hearing to mayor and council. So we are having that public hearing, but my intention is to remand this back to the zoning examiner to make sure that these concerns are being addressed.
And so do you want to open the public hearing tonight or continue the discussions in your office and reschedule the public hearing, or open it and continue
I
it?
would ask the city attorney for guidance.
Honorable Vice Mayor, Councilmember Santa Cruz, I think the appropriate thing would be to open up the public hearing for tonight and let folks speak on it. And that will still give Councilmember Santa Cruz the opportunity to remand the matter back to the zoning examiner, which is one of the options as described in the mayor and council communication.
Okay, fair enough. So is the applicant or representative present? And are you agreeable to the requirements proposed by the zoning examiner and staff?
My name is Thomas Guido, and yes, we're agreeable to what's being offered here in number 9.
Okay. So we're going to open the public hearing. The public hearing is scheduled to last for no more than an hour. Speakers are limited to 5-minute presentations. We have a few enough cards that we're going to get through this in much less than an hour. Please come forward when I call your name and make your presentation. State your name, whether you live in the city, with whom you're representing, and whether or not you're a paid speaker. So the first speaker will be Abriza Zaguirre, and the second speaker will be Mary Montoya.
Afternoon, Mayor and Council, or good evening. So this is ordinance 11989 is already written and basically ready for approval. A slight correction, this has gone before the zoning examiner twice, and he has recommended both times that it be denied. And a comment from the zoning examiner: the pad zone is not intended to be used simply to avoid requirements of other zones. As noted above, the proposed use does not comply with the basic standards and requirements of the RV zone, which kind of, one clarification. You got, they quoted something, it says UDC, okay, pad -46. Couldn't figure out what the 46 was for. Anyway, the owner commented at one time that there was only 3 neighbors to the south that opposed the pad regarding noise, littering, future views north across the proposed site. There are actually more than 3 neighbors. There were 6 addresses, 9 people living on South Probosco and 1 on Mission Road that opposed the pad, along with neighborhood leaders from Santa Cruz Southwest. And I am so sorry I didn't introduce myself. My name is Abriza Zakir. I am chair of the West Side Neighborhood Association, which I'm representing at this particular public hearing. And opposed by Santa Cruz Southwest and West Side neighborhoods. They filled out the approval protest forms offered, and there was only one of these approval protest form that actually approved of the pad. A person, it's in the public record, named James Griffin, 2077 West Ajo. This property address does not exist according to Pima County records. It may be associated with another property number, I don't know. And as far as we're running into UDC problems all over the place. There is no proper standards for addressing UDC standards except a requirement of 7,000 square feet. So kind of, the owner is asking to say, well, I'm not going to put anything in there bigger than 30 feet. Something better would be going, there's Class A, Class B, and Class C RVs. There's Class B and B+. Class B and B+ RVs are from 19 to 27 feet long. So maybe when deciding something like this, that you're rewriting the UDC codes and then having to come back and figure out what's going on is maybe need more clarification from TDSD and UDC and the powers that be on what are the real requirements for this. And you're planning on putting a pad in a residential zone. All the properties around this is residential. So is there some kind of criteria for putting an RV park in the middle of a residential zone? Granted, it is on a major street, and a local highway. So, I'm opposed to this as it stands. The owner has, wanted to put in, I think, 34. And I think I sent an extensive letter that had 3 aerial maps. One was from 2005 that kind of shows where these 34 sites are located. And it's a mishmash of some, there's RVs in there, and it looks like a few mobile homes also. But when they had these 34 sites there, they had a 4th entrance into the property on the far east that came through the neighbor's property and went around where they could get to the back end of the property. And now there's a fence there. So equating this to, well, it used to be 34 is not actually fair considering it's non-conforming and shouldn't have even started in the begin with. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Breezy. Mary Montoya, and the speaker following that will be Ann Gomez.
Hi, I'm Mary Montoya. I'm nervous. I've never done this before, but I live right in back of the RV park. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. And I'm here to express my strong opposition to the proposed rezoning of the RV park and to draw attention to a concerning issue that the zoning examiner has already denied the proposal twice. As a resident living behind the proposed RV park, I can attest to the detrimental impact it would have on our neighborhood. When the park was previously operating, we encountered issues with noise, disturbances caused by tenants, and multiple burglaries. Our neighborhood is not large, but we value the peace and quiet that we have enjoyed for many years. We have lived there 38 years. The recent revised proposal has not addressed the concerns raised previously. In particular, we have significant concerns about the parking lot that is proposed. It is located too close to our backyards and would cause excessive noise and disturbance. Moreover, the number of RV spaces is still too large, and we believe it is not suitable for the size of the property. In the event of a fire, this could be extremely dangerous and pose a risk. The traffic on Ajo Way is already at an all-time high, and an addition of RVs coming and going from the park will only add traffic problems. The two buildings on the property require significant remodeling, which the new proposal does not address. The owner may have obtained signatures from people down our street and on Ajo Way in support of the proposal, but these individuals do not live next door to the RV park and not affected as we are. It is essential that the City Council listens to the concerns of those who will be most impacted. Given the red flag raised by the zoning examiner's denial of the proposal twice, it is apparent that this proposal is not in the best interest of our community. I am asking the City Council to reject this proposal and preserve the safety, peace, and tranquility of our community. We would like to see single-family residential homes go in there instead. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Ann Gomez, and then Beryl, you're back up. Beryl Baker. Yeah, Ann, you're up.
Oh, I was here because of item number 10.
Okay. Then Beryl Baker, you're up now. The next one, so I'll start with her. Right in 10.
I'm Beryl Baker, and I live on Mission. I'm the facilitator, one of the facilitators for the Santa Cruz Southwest, but I am speaking for myself. And this is the first I've heard that the zoning examiner approved this. All we've heard is he didn't. So I don't know where that information came from. You had a chance to read the materials from the zoning examiner's 2 hearings. You know that the neighbors directly impacted would like you to deny the rezoning to a pad to allow the previous use of an RV park to be reestablished. You may not be aware that most of the people who signed for approval of the rezoning were either renters, people not directly impacted, absentee landowners, or people that feel they would benefit from this rezoning. You're also probably aware that as an individual, we were in favor of keeping an historical RV park there. However, it is not until this hearing that the owner finally accepted 20 spaces plus a manager space for a 40-foot mobile home. Having been on the site, it was obvious to us that allowing large RVs greater than 20 feet would pack the land like an RV sales lot. It is nice that the owner finally saw the wisdom of fewer spaces. After all, if he truly planned to live on the property, having all those units could be very intrusive. However, he still continues to offer solutions which are not conducive to a good neighbor. His 10-foot setback on the east and west would be intruded on by 30-foot RVs. And on the south, where he could have created a real buffer with nice landscaping and a park, he has chosen to make a parking lot out of it. As for putting more trees on the property, though laudable, to make it a more pleasant park, there does not appear to be any water harvesting component to the trees to make them self-sustaining. With water scarcity looming, this appears to be a huge oversight. Last Saturday, Lane's aide told us that the city council doesn't have the right to tell a person how they can develop their land. Our response to that is, then why do we have city land use codes and zoning restrictions? The neighbors to the south know that the owner with current zoning could put in houses, and they have said they are okay with that. Another person at that meeting on Saturday mentioned that we needed low-income housing in response to our presentation. This situation certainly has nothing to do with low income, so we were puzzled by their response. Though we personally would be willing to work with the owner to create a truly uniquely beautiful go-to RV trailer park for travelers, we suspect his goals are to pack as much as he can into that small parcel. Therefore, as a facilitator for our neighborhood, we need to stand by the neighbors directly impacted who would prefer for the R1 zoning to remain. As a compromise, since we saw that the zoning examiner thoroughly and thoughtfully studied the rezoning question, we would have liked to have had him give the opportunity on this new plan presented by the owner. From our recent dealings with the staff and city council, they appear to give developers the upper hand against neighbors. We stand with the neighbors who want the zoning to stay as it is, or, as an alternative, have this issue be remanded back to the zoning examiner. Maybe with a few more changes to the owner's current plans, there could be some agreement reached between the neighbors. If indeed the owner plans to live there, as a facilitator for the neighborhood, we would like the neighbors to feel like they have a good neighbor they can work and interact with in a positive manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Beryl. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on this public hearing, the RV Park public hearing?
And Vice Mayor, members of the council, just for clarification for the record, the zoning examiner did recommend denial in this instance, and the materials were correct with that regard. It's just that our script defaults to asking the applicant if they're agreeable with the conditions as approved by the zoning examiner, because that's the typical situation. But in fact, the record is clear that the recommendation from the zoning examiner was denial, so sorry for that confusion.
Okay, Councilmember Santa Cruz, you had indicated that you wanted to keep, just a second, hang on, that you wanted to keep the public hearing open, or what are your thoughts?
If we want the applicant to speak, is this the time?
Go ahead,
Councilmember Santa Cruz, if in fact it gets remanded to the zoning examiner, the appropriate thing would be to go ahead and close the public hearing in front of the mayor and council, because it would go back to the zoning examiner for a public hearing there before coming back to the mayor and council anyway.
Come on forward.
My name is Dan Eftemoff. I'm the owner of the proposed development. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and City Council members. I'm a little blown away by what Abriza had said, and Mrs. Montoya stating that there was 6 people against this. There was really only 3. I had 33 signatures in favor of it, number 1. Number 2, Abriza and Beryl and Mrs. Montoya all stated, and it's in the YouTube of the meetings that had taken place, they weren't against it, but would like to see 20 spaces instead of the 34. I documented all this and I brought it into Ms. Santa Cruz's office, and we passed it out to everyone. Had the plans. We did the zoning examiner did deny it, but 3 times the zoning department all were in favor of it, and everything that they stated was exactly what we were asked to do, was behind what we were asked to do. We made how many changes? 11 or 12? We made every change that the neighbors requested, and all their complaints were based on how it used to be. There was no fence around the back of the property. And the RV park existed since 1953. Even though it was an R1, it was a non-conforming R1 use. And the only reason it got lost was because the couple that was there got a divorce, and It shut down for a year, and because of the ordinance, it resorted back to R1. And the way it was stated, Ms. Abriza stated like, it's in the middle of a residential area. It's 300 feet from the end of Tucson's boundary at La Cholla. There's nothing to the west of me but a blank property that the gentleman intends to come into the council and request a C1 or C2 zoning because he wants, it's the guy who owns the big old tires in town because he wants to do something there. It's a major intersection. We're a good break between residential on Ajo and anything that goes to the corner, which should be commercial. Even though it's zoned residential, it was done a long time ago before the light was put in. Now there's a light there. You don't build residential houses at a stoplight on a major thoroughfare. This has always been an RV park, and we did everything that they requested. Even when we met with Beryl and Abriza at the last meeting, we showed them, and we turned it into Councilwoman Santa Cruz's office. Every change, we documented it and showed, look, we were putting a fence, an 8-foot steel and wood fence around the property, and the neighbors said, well, we want a block wall. It's okay. Even though it won't look as what the fence I was going to put up, I'll put an 8-foot block wall. We're doing that on the south side. Abriza asked for us to put water, how did she word it? Water harvesting. We put in the detention pond, and I showed running 6-inch drain tile all the way around the perimeter and on the edge of the streets, everywhere that water could possibly run, and have it run off into this detention pond, which then would be pumped to water any of the trees that would be planted along the property. They wanted us to, I originally had Italian cypress trees. They said, no, that's not natural vegetation. So I says, okay, I'll put mesquite. I did everything, single thing that they asked for, and they never, and when they went, and like I said, it's on YouTube, and I documented this and wrote it down verbatim what they said, turned it into Santa Cruz's office, and they stated, we're not against this. We would just like to see 20 spaces instead of 34. So I reduced it to 34. And what the zoning examiner was against it the first 2 times, but like I said, we did and his main complaint was, well, the neighbors have to be satisfied, was his #1 thing that he stated in there. So we did it. We went out to do everything to satisfy the neighbors. And they say there's 6. No, there isn't 6. There's only 3. There's Montoya, the lady in the back, and the other person. I forget their names, but there's just 3. So anyway, I would hope that Councilwoman Santa Cruz would like to see this approved, would make the motion, and the rest of the council members vote on it, because it's always been an RV park.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate your comments. May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The public hearing is closed. Ms. Clerk, you're requested to read ordinance 11989 by number and title only.
Ordinance number 11989 relating to zoning, amending zoning district boundaries in the area located at 2059 West Ajo Way on the south side of Ajo Way, 400 feet east of La Cholla Boulevard in case C9-22-02, Tucson Mountain RV Park Planned Area Development, R-1 to PAD-46, and setting an effective date.
Councilmember Santa Cruz, what would you like to do?
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor. So since the zoning examiner's final report in June 2022, the applicant has been working with our office and city staff to better address the concerns and issues raised during the public hearings. I know that there continues to be disagreement and tensions, and in the spirit of allowing for finding some common ground. I think it's difficult when folks are making it personal, rather than seeing, what are maybe the fears or the needs of that area. And so I want to give it one more opportunity by remanding this to the zoning examiner to try to work it out before it comes to another final approval to mayor and council. But just asking that all parties, show up in good faith rather than pointing fingers at each other, to try to come up with a reasonable resolution. So with that, I move that we remand the case back to the zoning examiner for a new public hearing to get further public comment, in particular regarding whether the changes to the application adequately address the issues raised in the protests.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Is this a roll call? Roll call?
Mick Santa Cruz,
Aye.
Mrs. Lee, Mrs. Lee,
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham,
Aye.
Mr. Dahl,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Kozachik.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you all for your participation. Item number 10. Ms. Clerk, please read the heading.
Public hearing zoning C9-22-03, New Era, Tanque Verde and Houghton, SR to R-1. City Manager's Report.
City Manager's communication number 46, dated February 22nd, is received into and made a part of the record. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the time and place legally advertised for a public hearing to rezone approximately 11.62 acres from SR to R1 zoning. The proposed project is a development, is to develop a residential subdivision comprised of 33 single-family detached homes. The applicant proposes using the flexible lot development provisions in the UDC, which allow a maximum density in R1 of 6.25 units per acre. This request proposes 2.9 units per acre. The rezoning site is located on the northeast corner of Tanque Verde Road and Houghton Road. Staff recommends authorization of the R1 zoning subject to certain conditions. The zoning examiner recommends that the requested rezoning from SR to R1 be denied. Is the applicant present tonight? What's your name, please?
Vice Mayor Kozachik, Jim Portner, Projects International. I'm the applicant in the case, also representing the property owner.
Thank you, Mr. Portner. We're about to open the public hearing, but just in order to help me frame what I'm hearing from the people who want to speak, the zoning examiner in his decision said that the applicant sought annexation in the city in 2016, and at the time the applicant stated its intention to rezone the property to RX1, a zoning classification that would be in keeping with the character of the existing neighborhoods. The zoning examiner goes on to say that nothing has changed between the time the property was annexed into the city and the present, and there's no basis to approve the more intensive land use requested. Are you disputing that the area, when the area was annexed, there was an agreement to build to RX1, or are you asking us to ignore that agreement?
Councilmember Cunningham and Vice Mayor Kozachik, in answer to your question, is this picking up? Because it doesn't sound. All right.
We got you.
All right, thank you. I had written a response letter to the zoning examiner's decision. It was a comprehensive analysis of all the applicable policies. I think that should be in your record. And I also addressed the issue that you've raised specifically here. If you'd like, I can articulate my answer again.
Well, the question is really, are you disputing the zoning examiner's contention that this was, at the time of annexation, this was to stay RX1?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Can I explain why, or is it a yes or no?
Sure, no, it matters.
Okay, all right, thank you for the opportunity. And here's why. When the zoning examiner raised that question at our public hearing, at our zoning examiner's public hearing last August, I didn't have all the background information, and so wasn't prepared then fully to respond to that. I did back then afterward go and do all of the background research on this. What I found is what I articulated in my letter, which was, to me, rather interesting. The only place that appears, this quote-unquote commitment for us to do an RX1 zoning, is in the original staff report of the annexation that was done prior to its adoption in 2016. I went further to find out what the source of that comment was. I went back to our client and everyone that worked there at the time No one has any recollection of in any way putting that on the record as a commitment on their part. That's item one. Item two, I went back and looked at all of the public hearings related to the annexation. No one from our organization, my client's organization, ever appeared at the public hearing and made any testimony whatsoever regarding this case. The real target of the annexation, of course, was the Desert Willow Ranch subdivision, not our property. So we never had any real involvement in the annexation. In fact, they were happy staying in Pima County, but all of the signatures needed to make it happen were in place. And so we just kind of stood by and accepted the fact that the city was growing and expanding eastward. However, there's no record of any of our people ever speaking on the record. There's only that one staff comment, which then got repeated in every subsequent staff report leading up to the final adoption of the annexation, to the point where it's kind of become now some kind of binding commitment on our part, and we still don't even know the source of it, unless there's someone that has some information that I have not been able to find. So our position was that, first of all, we don't have any record of us making that commitment, and then the other challenge, as articulated in my letter, was the fact that this idea that nothing's changed since 2016. I would assert that a lot has changed since 2016.
All right, appreciate your comments. We're going to open the public hearing then. And
all right, thank
hear
you.
from folks. This public, do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Any opposed? We're going to open the public hearing. The public hearing is scheduled to last for no more than 1 hour. Speakers are limited to 5-minute presentations. We do have several requests to speak. So let's open the public hearing. I will begin with Ann Gomez, and then the next speaker will be Vaughn Latour.
I'm going to keep it short. I'm Ann Gomez, and I live in the Tanque Verde Valley, and it's pretty peaceful out there. Not a lot of controversy until this issue came up, and it has caused a lot of resistance from the neighbors. One of the biggest problems is that this is right at the corner of Houghton and Tanque Verde. Tanque Verde Road has 2 schools on it, one a middle school and the other an elementary. So all the parents are bringing their children in at 8 o'clock. I invite you all to come out about 8 o'clock and see that intersection. I was there parked recently, and I had a green light. And you have Rural Metro, which uses that intersection. And apparently there isn't one of those white flashing lights there. I did hear the siren, and of course, even though I had a green light, I stopped because I knew that we had to stop. But there are other problems with this site also, and drainage, and of course, we've had the recent rains. But there are others that probably have more knowledge about that. But it's not right for our area.
Thank you, Vaughn Latour, and then Scott Trego will be following Vaughn.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Vaughn Latour. I'm the president of the Bear Canyon Neighborhood Association and vice president of the Powderhorn Ranch HOA. Many of tonight's speakers will focus on the different issues that should prohibit any changing of zoning for this property. Indeed, we have found the Agua Caliente wash in our area has been adversely affected by upstream development, and it is causing flooding right now in many of the downstream neighborhoods and the Isabella Leaf Wildlife Preserve. Directly under the Houghton Street Bridge spanning the Agua Caliente, we have proved that the bed of the Agua Caliente has risen over 3 feet since the FEMA flood management plan was published in 2005. In turn, because the bed is so much higher, now floodwaters breach even the man-made banks and flow directly into homes and properties bordering the wash. What I would like to do tonight, however, is bring to your attention Councilmember Kozachik's notice to us about SB 1117 that is in front of the state Senate right now, which endeavors to strip all of you of any power of managing the body created that you want in Tucson. SB 1117 is a developer-backed bill that will allow bypassing of zoning regulations to build whatever developers choose in any density that they feel they can make the most profit from, bypassing zoning requirements set up at local levels. The state legislature is trying to do an end court on the responsibility and power of local governments, much to yours and our demise. A well-planned, beautiful Tucson attracts future residents and businesses, increases tax ability, and improves Tucson's quality of life. In a time where maybe our current water needs are being met, there is no guarantee of future water since California seems to hold the Colorado River hostage to their cities and farmers. We need responsible local planning that takes this climate change we are experiencing into account, not a total collapse of planning by local governments in the hunt for developers' larger profits. We have a good mix of age groups in Tucson today and are attracting retirees from all over the nation. What will happen when this becomes a vision of the lawless Old West that cannot be sustained, where the almighty dollar takes precedence over common sense? The Bear Canyon neighborhood was developed by the city in association with affected neighborhoods in 1984. The long-range plans of the city were to create expansion plans that would create desirable neighborhoods with different densities that give the Tanque Verde Valley the premier feel that it has today, one of suburban ranch density and quality. This has made the area the focus of developers. 8 different projects now in our immediate area who seek to stuff as many luxury casitas as possible into the property. The city developed long-range plan in 1984 and received accolades from all across the nation for the foresight and the planning it had created. This plan and all zoning became a contract with the homeowners buying into the area. Due to well-thought-out zoning classifications, it created a desirable neighborhood with lower violent crime and beautiful riparian areas. There is no reason to abandon this plan that is working perfectly. But let there be no mistake, a developer's plan for so-called luxury is simply a buzzword to get you to go along with their plans. The city of Tucson needs affordable rent accommodations. Luxury doesn't fit that bill. Along and within the Agua Caliente, where annual flooding now occurs, it is not right. Why create future havoc and catastrophe for our rental population that cannot buy or afford flood insurance by renting a dwelling knowingly built within a floodplain and allowing this to happen? I respectfully ask that you say no to this project and like projects within the Tanque Verde Valley area.
Thank you. Scott Trago. And following Scott will be David Williams.
Vice Mayor, council members, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Scott Trigo. I reside at 10410 East Rancho del Este Drive. Let's talk about traffic, because no one really wants to. For some reason, the city of Tucson appears to accept the conclusions of any traffic analysis with no regard for the residents who travel the roads. Red Point Development stands by their traffic study, openly stating that given 33 new homes in this area, the addition of 5 cars exiting the development during peak hours will, quote unquote, be a small bump in traffic. Worst case for AM peak hour traffic. These conclusions, they're absurd. The intersection of Tanque Verde and Houghton roads allow for one lane of traffic, north-south and east-west. In current peak hours traffic, cars are literally backed up to Tanque Verde and Agua Caliente and beyond. It's not uncommon to have a half-mile backup, especially with students arriving or leaving school, and the congestion only reappears less than an hour later from individuals returning home from work. Recently, a left turn signal was installed at our intersection, and it has relieved the flow of traffic, allowing people to turn south, to turn left onto Tanque Verde. But there are 3 other sides to this traffic problem that have not been addressed, so it really begs the question. Why are Band-Aids put on wounds when stitches are absolutely needed? This issue is systemic and has far-reaching impacts, but the city seems only concerned with the developer's immediate needs. Specific to this proposal, 1 new driveway will be created. It significantly limits ingress and egress, and is critical to emergency vehicles. In the event of wildfire, flood, or any required evacuations, the future residents are at high risk of being unable to leave the development, potentially harming people and animals who cannot gain access to Tanque Verde Road from their homes. Emergency vehicles such as fire and ambulance will have to overcome obstacles to enter and exit the development, and heaven help anyone experiencing heart failure during peak traffic hours. And how about the ability to turn around those emergency vehicles once they're in the development? Does Mr. Portner or Red Point Development have any experience actually maneuvering a fire truck or an ambulance in a small area? Remember, there are 2 streets to exit Tanque Verde's valley, and that's during an emergency, Tanque Verde Road and Houghton Road, and it's 1 lane traffic each way. The city should be looking at the big picture, not the one case perspective. There are at least 4 new rezoning requests, all claiming little to no traffic impact to Tanque Verde Road. Singularly, that may be the case, but not when considered as a whole. Each of these new developments will strain an already stressed route. And after researching this parcel for 3 years, we ask that all of the comprehensive, detailed studies required by the city be completed prior to a request for rezoning, not after the request has been granted. Due diligence is critical to ensure that one-off decisions, poor decisions, do not cause more harm than good. We ask you to reject this request.
Thank you. David Williams, and after Mr. Williams will be Robert Torres.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Williams. My wife Nancy and I built a home about 150 feet north of the subject property 25 years ago. We are against this development for several reasons, but among the reasons is that it will destroy magnificent riparian habitat, which includes a large bosque, which I can show on this particular here, in the upper picture, of native trees, mostly mesquite and some other native trees. Recently, you published a draft of an incredible Tucson Resilient Together program. That was an outstanding document and effort on your part. And it's very timely because in several of the sections of your program, you stress the importance of preserving and enhancing riparian habitat around our community. One of the goals in Tucson Water's One Water 2100 approach is to enhance the community's quality of life by preserving and restoring riparian areas and to increase urban tree canopy. And you also intend to build on the work of the Storm and Shade program to encourage green infrastructure and to explore opportunities to restore existing riparian areas and make new climate resilient riparian zones. And of course, your Million Trees program is already taking off and a great benefit to the community. So when we think about riparian habitat, I'd like to call your attention to this poster, which shows how the property looks now and what it would look like if the proposed development is permitted to proceed. The 33 homes and their associated driveways and streets will completely replace about 8 of the 11.4 acres of this property. For a sensitive riparian habitat like this, that represents habitat obliteration. It's like dropping an 8-acre, 2-story parking lot on top of that property. Tucson Audubon's conservation advocate, David Robinson, weighed in on this project and sent a separate communication to you expressing his concerns about the zoning request. In it, he identifies a bird, the western yellow-billed cuckoo, as a rare bird of particularly urgent concern for this general area. He concludes in his memo to you, "We urge the city to protect the area's riparian habitat by denying the rezoning request or by approving rezoning only to a lower RX1 zone rather than the requested R1 zone." So to summarize, we can have this or we can have that. And I'd prefer we have the view on top. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Robert Torres, and following Mr. Torres will be Tom Adang. I'm sure you'll correct that when you get up here.
Good evening. My name is Robert Torres. I live in Pima County and I represent myself. My home is adjacent to the proposed project site to the north. One of my biggest concerns is the change in water flow that will happen if this rezoning is approved. According to the builder's plan, the site will need to be raised several feet out of the floodplain. Approximately 80% of the 11 acres will need to be graded and an estimated 13,000 cubic yards of fill will be brought in. This project has described an elaborate plan, in the words of the developer, to flood-proof this new development from substantial natural drainage. In addition to elevating the site, this plan includes the redirection of water by constructing a perimeter channel, the use of water directing pipes, and even using the development's main street as a major drainage route. All this shows that there will definitely be a change in the quantity, speed, and flow of the water around this site. However, unfortunately, county regulations bar me from redirecting the natural flow of water in any way, leaving me no options for flood-proofing my land. In Exhibit 9 of the plan, which is what we wanted to bring and blow up and kind of show you a little more of what we would be dealing with directly. In Exhibit 9 of the plan, the current natural floodplain runs directly through at least 50% of the proposed build site, with only a small portion of my property being affected. In Exhibit 11, post-development hydrology, the flood line is now encompassing more than 50% of our usable space, now making it virtually unusable. The plan also identifies several washes that run through this site. And the reports that they are not well defined, I would dispute this claim. In fact, wash number 1 flows swiftly every time we have a moderate storm. Now we're looking at that view from our property through these washes looking south towards this proposed site. The plan also defines these washes run through the site. Okay, number 1 flows swiftly every time we have a moderate storm, sometimes pushing water onto neighboring property, including the proposed project site. Keeping with a low-density zoning will help maintain the natural water flow in this area and protect neighboring properties from the negative impacts that this plan will have on flooding. When purchasing our home, we researched the zoning for this property, concerned about what might be built on these 11 acres. We never imagined that it could change from 3 homes on that property to possibly over 30. I am not asking that a property owner not be able to use their land, but that they do so without adding undue burden on surrounding neighbors. I know that I am not alone in this feeling, as over 2,000 other people have signed the petition to stop this rezoning. In closing, I am here to ask for your empathy and help in protecting the interest of more than just the builder, but also my interests as a resident and neighbor. Thank you for your time.
Robert Adang, and followed by Heidi Schul.
Good evening, Vice Mayor, council members. My name is Tom Adding. I reside in Lakes at Castle Rock in northeast Tucson. I'm part of Ward 2, where I serve as the Castle Rock HOA president, a volunteer position. I'm here this evening to discuss my concerns and the concerns of my over 420 fellow homeowners about the increased flood risks that are caused from building homes in close proximity to our HOA and other HOAs within the Bear Canyon Neighborhood Association that Von Latour spoke about earlier. And that whole association that abuts the Tanque Verde Creek. And this includes, but does not, is not the only one, includes the New Era LLC development as part of a broader class. I'd like to illustrate the reason for my concerns and start with the 4 images on this poster. The first one is a map of the Bear Canyon Neighborhood Association. Let me just point to a couple of key points. This is the map of Bear Canyon. The southern edge of Bear Canyon Neighborhood Association is the northern bank of Tanque Verde Creek. The eastern edge is along Houghton. This is Tanque Verde Boulevard. This is Houghton. New Era is just right here off this map. Other things that are not on this map, the fact that the Agua Caliente Wash, which Mr. Latour talked about earlier, is to the east of New Era, flows down, comes across Houghton underneath, merges with Tanque Verde Wash, and forms Tanque Verde Creek. I want to give an indication of where those areas are. The challenge we have is, even without any building in areas close to these HOAs, we already experience flooding. The two images, next two images, upper right and lower left, are images of flooding that occurred with winter rains on the morning of January 17th of this year. The upper one, this is where the Agua Caliente was a roaring river on that morning. It, along with the water that came from that, flowed into the Tanque Verde Creek. It overflowed. It flooded all the southern section of the lakes at Castle Rock. It flooded our largest lake, then caused water to flow up a concrete wash in direct opposition to what it's designed to do, and then flooding the major road, Castle Rock Drive, one of the two major roads, into and out of our neighborhood, and that's the lower left. But in the upper right again, the water flowed through our major lake. That overflowed both north and south, and the water from that then flowed on all the way westward into Tanque Verde Country Estates on the west side of Woodland Drive. And so with those, that type of flooding, it was not an abnormal winter rain process, at best above average, but it was still a regular flooding process. Flooding in this area occurs, and occurs seasonally with winter rains. It certainly occurs with monsoon rains as well. The last image in the lower right is from 2 years ago, where we've had substantial flooding with 6 inches of rain in less than 10 hours. So we get monsoon rains, we have winter rains, we have flooding there, and this is before any building is done in New Era and in the Casita La Mariposa area. Any additional building there will then be very much like Mr. Williams described, which are great big blocks of concrete are set there where water does not soak into the ground, it does not recharge the aquifer. It runs off and runs off very rapidly. It will only exacerbate the current flooding problem we have and not make it better. I'm a recent retiree, but before that I spent almost 50 years as a scientist. I got my PhD in atmospheric sciences with a focus on the monsoon, University of Arizona in 1989. I was Deputy Director of Weather for the Air Force. I was a past president of the National Weather Association. I've been a senior executive of the Department of Commerce, and I've worked with political leaders at city, state, national, and international level, including a 106-nation intergovernmental program supporting water rights management for the world. So I come up with a perspective of a homeowner who's impacted and from a professional perspective that says, this is not really a very good decision technically, and not a very good decision from a business standpoint, certainly not one from a political standpoint. So I close with a statement that really says, don't take a short-term gain, maybe in housing, for a long-term pain, for 30-fold increase in number of people that will suffer the ill effects of flooding in the future. For that, I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Heidi Schul, followed by Margot Susko.
Vice Mayor, council members, my name is Heidi Schul. I also reside in the lakes at Castle Rock. I'm a Tucson native and have lived in the Tanque Verde Valley for 49 years. I don't believe this rezoning is in the best interest of our community ecologically or for safety reasons. And the points that I'm going to make are going to be magnified by the other rezoning proposals that we also have in our valley going on at this time and into the future. And a couple of things I've heard tonight that I'm going to be pointing out again, so you'll hear some new things from this. I've just retired from Coronado National Forest, a 30-year career, and that gave me a background in natural resource management and emergency management. And tonight you're hearing points made on flooding, water scarcity, how this type of development doesn't fit with the character of the area, and more, which I agree with. But my focus is going to be on emergency exit capacity, which is the ability to leave in case of emergency and/or evacuation. The Tanque Verde Valley is bordered by Coronado National Forest and the Santa Catalina Mountains to the north, think that way, and Soro National Park with the Rincon Mountains to our east. And they abut each other, and that landlocks us. We then have, as you heard, two directions for ingress and egress, south and west only. Two significant waterways, Tanque Verde and Agua Caliente creeks, run intermittently through the valley and experience seasonal flooding. When flooded, they may pose threats to life and property and impede travel as well. Also, in recent years, land managers and residents have seen fire season, which was formerly a summer phenomenon, grow to year-long in duration. Fire behavior has become extreme, with fires more difficult to suppress if that is the desired strategy. The Bighorn Fire in the Santa Catalina Mountains in 2020 was an example, as were the Bullock and Aspen fires of 2002 and 2003. The Bighorn Fire reminds us that fires don't stay high in the mountains. Ignited by a lightning strike on June 5th, it burned uncontrollably for a month and a half. A number of foothills neighborhoods were evacuated, and some experienced flooding following the fire. And that scenario could easily happen in the Tanque Verde Valley with fire coming out of the Santa Catalinas or the Rincons, and then subsequent flooding as well. And so emergency exit capacity, which is not a formal term, but it's our ability to escape to safety, and that's already limited. As the Tanque Verde Valley is landlocked, residents can only exit to the south and the west in case of an emergency on a number of roads, a very limited number of roads, and only 2 of those are paved, and 2 lanes to get all of these people out of this area. Tanque Verde and Houghton were already mentioned, and local traffic already backs up, as was mentioned. Adding more vehicle adds to a problem that may already be unmanageable. When wildfire comes knocking, winds can push embers in excess of a mile ahead of the wildfire, starting new fires, resulting in evacuation orders with little or no advance notice. With 2 directions to evacuate on limited roadways, how will all of these folks get out? Unfortunately, much of the land in this valley will eventually go up for sale with rezoning or building or resale as goals. Please consider the tremendous costs versus the limited benefits when evaluating rezoning applications in this rural, landlocked valley. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Margot Susko, followed by Julia Matter. Mayor.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Kozaczyk, Council Members Santa Cruz, Cunningham, Dahl. City Manager Ortega, thank you for listening to me this evening. I'm a native Tucsonan, and I've lived on Houghton and Flintlock Trail since 1975. I purchased the family home from my parents 25 years ago. My land falls within 100 feet of the parcel in question, and I am not a paid speaker. I thought I'd get that in there. Over the last 47 years, I have appreciated the over 100-year-old mesquite trees in my area. I've witnessed the catastrophic flooding of 1983 and 93, and I've borne witness to the yearly monsoon flooding of mine and adjacent parcels of land because we sit in a flood hazard area in the Pima County Regional Zone. I was disheartened to learn about the proposed R1 rezoning request to single out the suburban ranch corner parcel, riparian habitat, and flood zone, which has stood vacant since long before I moved into the area, and for very good reason. First off, this request for rezoning is a substantial change in density, far from what originally promised and inconsistent with the low-density properties that surround it. Currently, there is not another parcel of land zoned R1 and a development with that level of density within a 5-mile radius, and that includes Desert Willow. This is clearly spot zoning. Is it illegal? No. Is it wrong? Yes. It also bothers me that the term Plan Tucson has been thrown around so much as some type of justification for this rezoning. I do not believe that this is Plan Tucson, and it concerns me that the broad nature of the current plan may leave situations such as this open for interpretation. I am pro-smart growth, but this rezoning request is not backed by solid and relevant data, a comprehensive long-term growth plan, and an independent impact study. For every action, there is a reaction, and we must be mindful of the fact that every time flow is shifted, every time traffic patterns are not taken seriously, wildlife is pushed out, or the environment is taken for granted without a proper long-term growth plan for our area, there will be a reaction. These are not planned communities, and each one of these one-off proposed rezoning projects are being treated as just that, and the entirety of the impact on the area is not being addressed. For someone such as myself and my neighbors, this is quite concerning. The negative consequences will be immediate, and the long-term damage, well, unfortunately, will be there when we get there. But who's going to be with us to pick up the pieces when that happens? There's far too much here at stake. The new era rezoning proposal goes against the public interest and contradicts what we in Tucson hold dear, pay attention to, and champion: water usage and scarcity, the retention of our mature desert environment and respect for our riparian environment, and intentional and mindful decision-making around flood zone and washes, especially in our Tanque Verde Valley. I join my fellow neighbors and friends of the Tanque Verde Valley in strong opposition of this rezoning statement, and I thank you for your time.
Julia Mayer, and then Dorothy Alden.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and council members, and thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on this rezoning request. I do live in the city limits, and I am not a paid speaker. My name is Julia Mater, and my husband Eric and I own the parcel north and adjacent to the subject property. We purchased our property several years ago with the intent of building our family home. Like many of our neighbors that have come to speak today, we strongly oppose the rezoning request in its current form. Residents of the Tanque Verde Valley value privacy, open space, natural landscapes, desert views, and a quieter lifestyle. The proposed development's higher density undermines those values and is inconsistent with the neighboring low-density residential communities. We were surprised and disheartened by the request to rezone the property to R1, which is a substantial change from the current zoning and differs from the information provided to the public in conjunction with the annexation of the property by the city. At that time, we were informed that the developer planned for a future rezoning at a similar density to the nearby Desert Willow subdivision, which is zoned RX1. We relied on that information on that information when deciding whether to oppose annexation, as it was the only information provided to the public by the city at that time regarding the proposed future use of the property. And I don't know what the source of that information was, but I also don't think that's what's important. I think the point is that's the information that was out there at the time, and that's the information that we believed. The city and the developer should now follow through with the assurances that were made. The zoning examiner noted this issue, and we urge you to adopt the recommendations of the zoning examiner and deny the requested rezoning on this basis. In addition, R1 zoning represents an intensity level that is too great of a change from the current zoning and too out of line with the zoning in the surrounding area. Our property, like the subject property, experiences significant flooding issues. We are concerned about the inevitable negative impacts from the proposed development. We understand and appreciate that residential development is both inevitable and important to the Tucson community. However, such development must be compatible with the surrounding community and the long-standing values of the Tanque Verde Valley, and should not negatively impact the neighboring properties. We join and support the comments of our neighbors this evening, and thank you for your consideration of the issues raised tonight. We ask that you deny the requested rezoning until the developer submits a plan that is compatible with the Tanque Verde Valley community and its prior rezoning commitments. Thank you.
Thank you. Dorothy Alden. And Dorothy is the last card I got, but Brent, I see you came in and you filled out a card. If you're intending to speak, then, or no? If not, Dorothy will be our last speaker. Go ahead.
Ready? I'm Dorothy Alden, a Tucson resident in the Powderhorn Ranch neighborhood. And the Powderhorn Ranch is only a half a mile north of this proposed development. I'm representing myself and other residents of the Powderhorn Ranch neighborhood. And I am opposed to this rezoning that's under consideration. The current zoning of the proposed development is SR Suburban Ranch, which requires large lots, usually more than 1 acre. RX1, which many of the surrounding residents would most likely approve, requires a minimum lot size of 16,000 square feet. This request proposes a change to R1 with an average lot size of only 6,390 square feet. As stated in the zoning examiner's report, the property is surrounded on 3 sides by neighborhoods with existing low-density residential development and a separate large undeveloped floodplain to the south. Under Plan Tucson, the policy goal for development within an existing neighborhood is to maintain the character of existing neighborhoods, complementing existing land uses, and enhance the overall function and visual quality of the street, adjacent properties, and the community. The proposed development does not meet these policy goals. In fact, it would do the opposite. I agree with the other issues that have been discussed by opponents of the rezoning, such as water use, traffic, flooding, etc. Even though Tucson has a current need for higher density housing, it also has a need for homes with lower density neighborhoods. Lower density homes within walking access to open trails, paths, and nature provide a healthy, less stressful influence. It took my family over 2 years of searching to find such a home in Tucson. The proposed development of this property would much better match the neighborhood at current zoning or at RX1. I urge the council to adopt option 4 as stated and deny the request to rezone as recommended previously by the zoning examiner. Thank you.
Thank you. Brett, just to be clear, you do not choose to, okay. May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, the public hearing is closed. What's the council's pleasure on this item?
Your Honor, two things with regard to this item. Number one, it came up today in study session when we talked about the rural and sub-rural barrier that we've developed and that value that the county roads bring. And remember that I'm the king of incorporation, and I think that Tanque Valley should form some type of town or co-op so that they can run their own zoning. But at the end of the day, there's value to what we have with that barrier. So that's a big piece to this, is every single time we chip away at that, we lose that value. The other piece is speaking of RTA, because that was during the RTA item, we're punting on the North Houghton project right now. It's going to go into RTA next. It's only going to get delayed by a year or two, but still, that really makes you hesitate on any type of development, whether you're going forward. And the issue here is, and it was brought up, is you got the Larrabee, you got the Casitas, you got Mariposa, you got Red Point, and it hit all these folks at the same time. And me, being ADHD myself back when I was a kid, you throw 4 rezonings into one neighborhood all at one time, of course you're going to have a reaction like that. And I totally understand. The other piece is, and this was brought home, and we have 2 gentlemen in this group who are, one's a specialist as an atmospheric science, one's a former member of the Corps of Engineers, and they both made a really good point about flooding. But the issue is that we listened to 2 people who are native Tucsonans who've lived out in the TVV for the last 40 years, and they remember 1983. And that right there is enough to freak anybody out. So the bottom line is that we're not repeating 1983. We're not going to let anybody get flooded. And if there's no objection, we said in that meeting, unless we've got 100% bona fide that we're not going to get flooded, we can't even have the discussion. But it didn't even matter. It never even got there, because early on in the outset, I was given the impression that this annexation had taken place some 20 years ago. And that wasn't the case. It had been taking place in 2016. I sat on this dais and voted, and when I voted, I made that promise to what that said. And it's in the record. I even have it on my phone right now. I have the minute entry from that meeting. And it says, and I quote, "An additional property owner has 11 acres on the northeast corner of Tanque Verde and Houghton that is currently vacant. The owner would like to consider a rezoning to support a residential density similar to the Pulte project, which is Desert Willow." That's what it says in the MEL. That's what I voted for. I'm not going back on that. I can't believe anybody would ever think I would. So those are the pieces. Those are the pieces to this. I see Tom here, Robin and Ann, people people I've known for 10, 15, 20 years, and some people that I've met in the last year who, we're all on a good basis. And the fact of the matter is that Mike and Dan and Brett, who worked on the Red Point side, they're friends too. And we tried to get everybody in a room and talk it out and try to Vaughn, everybody was around. Everybody tried to be in the know. But the bottom line is this just isn't going to work. We're not going to get what we need from this project. We may go down the road and maybe even take a look at doing something much more modest with much less land, which makes way more sense as far as an opportunity to mitigate flooding downstream, and maybe even, and who knows what it'll be. It could be anything from, light commercial or some type of equestrian or whatever, something that's in line with what our values are out there. But this isn't going to be it. I thought we could thread the needle with cluster development, but the bottom line is that once the zoning examiner pointed out that we couldn't have that because that's not what we had promised, that was the end of it. More importantly, a lot of people know me to be as fair as possible when it comes to these things, and I actually have a record of supporting a lot of development. And the bottom line is that I'm not going to give in to, I don't want to be in that situation where somebody's going to stand up and go, well, you gave in NIMBYs for political convenience. That's baloney. I reject that 100. I'm not giving in to NIMBYs. I'm doing the right thing, and that is that this project doesn't work. It doesn't work for all the reasons that I just said. And it isn't like it's just a little bit. It's not close. It's a swing and a miss. I move we reject it. That's my motion.
Second.
Second.
Motion in a couple of seconds. I would add that the rest of that minute entry says that.
Kurt, I think for the record, that's option 4, correct? For clarification.
I don't have the options.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. The rest of that minute entry describes the Pulte project as, in the record of the Desert Willow annexation, was zoned RX1. So what you say is totally consistent with the zoning examiner's determination. Any discussion on the motion in the second? Hearing none, let's go to roll call.
Ms. Santa Cruz?
Aye.
Mr. Cunningham?
Aye.
Mr. Dahl?
Aye.
Mrs. Lee?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Kozachik?
Aye, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you all for your participation tonight and throughout the process. Item number 12.
We're adjourning in like 5 seconds if you guys want to stick around and say hello real quick.
Item 12, City Clerk.
Adjournment?
Council will stand adjourned. This next regularly scheduled meeting will be on Tuesday, March 7th, 2023, at or after 5:30 p.m. Thank you all for coming.